There we go. We are going to start seated today. So, as you're getting ready to find that space for yourself, and just a reminder to anybody where seated does not feel very good for you for hip reasons, back reasons, feel free to rest on your back or on your side, whatever feels comfortable. We're really just looking for a lengthened spine, and that can happen in seated. It could also happen while you're reclining. And as you're getting settled in here, as you're starting to find that place to begin your class and your practice, you might take a few of those deeper inhales and those longer exhales. We can think about those exhales settling into the weight of the body where you're connected to the floor. And once those breaths feel complete, just inviting now the body to breathe itself. There's no effort to breath. And we're going to take a few moments just to notice this physical body, to notice if there is sensation that's arising. Sometimes it gains our notice very quickly. Sometimes it's a little more subtle. It's also possible that there isn't a lot of sensation present this morning that we're noticing or that's coming up for us. And that's okay too. If that sensation is rising up, we're noticing it with curiosity. We're noticing maybe some of those physical qualities of sensation. And if not a lot is present for you, you might take a few moments here just to name different spaces in the body, to notice then as your attention and your brain's attention is drawn to the area, if there is sensation that is present. So just about a minute here to notice that sensation with curiosity, or to move through the body, maybe naming a few places to notice what might be present in those places. And then we'll draw our awareness to our breath. And without changing the breath, we're just noticing where we're breathing. So as we're inhaling, what do you feel expand? Maybe it's the chest or the upper chest area, perhaps lower chest or belly area. And when you next exhale, noticing if there's that sense of release or ease, or sometimes we even name it as this deflating sort of sense, a balloon that's inflating and deflating. So just noticing here, path of breath for about the next 4 to 5 breaths. And throughout today's practice, witnessing that breath can help us do a couple of things. It can help us really sort of decide where we want to take our practice. If we feel out of breath, that's always a message that we might be over efforting. You can also bring in more life force energy, that prana, into the body. So deeply breathing and breathing fully throughout your poses can help bring more prana into the body. If your eyes are closed when you next inhale, we're going to blink those eyes open. We're going to meet in tabletop. So taking your time to get there, especially if you've been reclining, you might roll over to one side and then gently bring yourself to seated. Then coming to meet us in tabletop. And just a reminder as you get in set up, we might have palms on, fingers spread wide, pressing into our fingerprints. That'll take some of the weight off the wrists. You can also do fists. So especially if you shouldn't have weight on the wrists, we can bring ourselves to our fists. We're going to start with that cat cow, and we'll begin first by just pressing that mat away from us, tucking your tailbone, maybe drawing belly in as you nod the chin. And then we'll let our belly drop, heart open, gaze goes towards the top of the mat or into this neutral space. So it's an exhale to press away to round, and inhale to drop belly, look up towards the mat, getting some rhythm to the spine and movement coordinated with breath. So we're exhaling, tucking, rounding into cat. And then when we inhale, we let belly drop, heart expand, looking up into cow. Let's do 3 more on your own time with your own breath rhythm. And then when you've finished this series, we're going to take a moment here just to come back to that neutral spine. I'm really long from my tail to the top of my head, tucking toes under. If toes agree, we're going to press a little weight back towards those heels, stretching the arches of the feet. Sometimes toes do not agree to this. And if that's the case, keep your toes pointed and still pressing some weight back. You can go all the way back towards the heels if that feels very intense on knees, back, or toes. A little less weight can be created by bringing your hips a little further forward. Good stuff for plantar fasciitis, starting to get a little bit into that Achilles tendon in the back of the ankle. From a Chinese medicine or traditional Chinese medicine perspective, we've got those 6 lovely meridians that begin in the feet and a few that are also in the fingertips. We're going to rise back up and then go ahead, if you will, point your toes, maybe give them a good wiggle. We're going to do this upper body stretch. Walk your hands a little closer to the top of your mat. Now you might come down just to elbows, let the belly drop. You might bring forehead down. Forehead down is going to create a little more compression in the tops of the shoulders. So just measuring this with sensation. If that's too much, just bring the elbows down, let your belly drop towards the floor a little bit more like our cow part of our cat cow, stretching through that upper body, torso, arms, and shoulders here. And some of these spaces that might feel a little more challenging to hold or to move through, that's where we're really paying attention to breath. We want to make sure we're not holding breath and we're breathing fully. On your next inhale, we're going to rise up. We're going to bring that right foot forward between the hands. And we're going to stay here either in a low lunge, or for those of us who have that hip compression, that front crease of the thigh, you can bring your hands or forearms up to the top of the thigh. So you might have to walk that left leg back just a little bit. Right now, we're just hanging out in our lunge. Arms can be framing the foot or come inside the foot, or of course on blocks. We're thinking a little bit here about heaviness of the front of the left thigh. It's just trying to get closer to the floor with gravity, getting that good stretch to the front of the quads, the front of the thigh, I should say, which are the quads. And then we're just going to shift our weight to the back knee. We start a little hamstring stretch of that front leg. Just a reminder here, leg doesn't have to go straight for you to feel the sensation of this. If it does happen to go straight, you might flex the foot to increase the stretch using blocks here, or again, modifying a little bit with hands on forearms. It becomes a little bit more of a balance as we're pressing back, so do be careful. One more full breath here. And then we'll bend into that front knee. We're going to plant the hands and we're actually going to transition into our first down dog. So down dog might be here in this letter upside down V. It could also be on knees, more of a quarter dog, much like our toe tuck and how we began, clasped fingertips reaching towards the mat. Could also be child's pose. So lots of versions of down dog. It can be still or wiggly. We're going to do one more breath here. And then we're going to go ahead and swing that left foot forward. Same idea here, low lunge, lots of options of where to place the hands or the arms on the thigh. And thinking about weight through the front of that right thigh. A little stillness here, a little longer hold. And then we'll shift that weight, pardon me, to the back knee, feeling that sensation of stretch in that thigh, back of the thigh. And reminder, stretch often feels more like tension or resistance. Leg does not have to go straight, but if it does, you might see if you can flex those toes, get a little extra stretch down through that calf. On your next exhale, just shift that weight forward. We're going to come in again to your version of a down dog. And I forgot to mention an option would be also down on elbows. So it looks more like a dolphin, but any option here, pardon me, for 5 full breaths. You can wiggle in it. You can run the dog. You could wag the dog, wag that tail. When you exhale next, we're going to walk those feet towards the hands. And here in our forward fold, we have those soft knees. We might grab hold of the opposite elbow, letting your chin nod to look through those legs. You can ragdoll it here. You could rock side to side. You might stay still. You might even nod the head yes and no, just to see if we can get that neck to release a little further. Then we're going to let our fingers dangle, finger dangle. We're going to let those fingers dangle towards the floor. We'll slowly roll up. It's a new word. Once we're up, I'm just going to turn to face you, but you're here at the top of your mat. We're going to do some shoulder rolls, and they're exaggerated. So we might get them up into the ears, push them pretty far back. It doesn't matter which direction you started. We're going to do both. Sometimes these are a little bit tricky, and if they feel tricky to you, you might just do shoulder shrugs, shrugging ears in or shoulders into the ears and then releasing. Go ahead if you're circling, reverse your circle. Might be a little noisy in there. Mine are noisy for sure. When you're ready, let those shoulders drop. We're just going to take our gaze over one shoulder. We'll come back through center, gazing over the other shoulder. And standing here with parallel feet, a little space between those feet, we're going to do a little bit of side body stretching. So your right arm is going to slide down the leg. You're going to lean over to that right side. You have some choices with this left arm. It can go behind the back. It could reach T. It could reach all the way overhead. And we're going to be shifting through this. So we'll rise back up. Both hands will be at the side. And then we'll lean over to that left, sliding the left hand down the leg, deciding what you'd like to do with the right arm. We'll inhale to rise up. Exhale to reach over right side. Inhale, rise up. Last one here, exhale to reach over left side. Inhale, rising up. We're going to bring hands to heart. I'm going to step back to the front of my mat. We're going to move through a little bit of our sun salutation. So we'll take those fingertips up towards the ceiling. As you exhale, arms reach wide, maybe soft knees here as those hamstrings are getting warmed up. We'll inhale, find your halfway lift. So you're just touching what's available. Might be thighs, shins, or the floor. Exhale, release into your forward fold. Arms reach wide as we rise back up. Maybe gazing at the ceiling if neck allows. Exhale, hands come to heart. Inhale, fingertips reach. Exhale, rounding forward. Inhale, find that halfway lift. Exhale, release. Try to release that head to look through the legs. Arms reach wide as we rise back up. Inhaling. Exhale, hands come to heart. We're going to do that 2 more times. Inhale, fingertips reach. Exhale, rounding forward. Inhale, find that halfway lift, long spine. Exhale, release to look through legs. Arms reach wide as we rise. Back up. Exhale, hands come to heart. Last one of these before we add in. We're going to inhale, reach. Exhale, round forward. Inhale, find your halfway lift. Exhale, release forward. We're going to step back into our plank and we're going to go down to the floor. So you could do that in full plank. You can always come down to knees. We're going to lower down and then we'll inhale, finding low cobra. We're going to stay put here in low cobra for a moment. So we have our heart off. We're pressing into our palms, elbows hugged into the rib cage. If you can, you're pulling belly away from the mat to feel this contraction through the backside body. Feet remain on the floor. Couple more breaths here. This energizing back bend, building a little bit more energy for a day. And then your version of down dog. We're going to press back into any of those opportunities. Could be child's pose, could be down on elbows, could be down on knees. Fully breathing here. Maybe check those palms if they are on. We're spreading fingers, pushing through fingerprints to distribute the weight out of the wrists. When you exhale next, we're going to step that right foot forward. For some of us, that means the left knee needs to come down and we got to swing some things around. We are going to cartwheel right up into our warrior two, which means our hips are open to the long edge of the mat. We've got fingertips reaching, and we might make this a little wiggly by bending in and out of front knee. Gazing over those front fingertips. And my knee's making noise. We're going to land in that knee. That knee's tracking over the second toe. And just holding here for strength. You might think about or imagine that you could draw your heels a little bit closer to each other. That's going to get some strength fired up in the legs. Fingertips reaching forward and back, strength through those arms. Maybe even a little tiny tailbone tuck to make sure we're holding core and letting that core build us up longer and taller. Just 2 more full breaths here. And then if you'll bring your hands to hips, we're going to leave hips towards the long edge of the mat, but we're going to take a little bit of a lean, not quite elbow to knee. Left hand is going to come behind the back. Right arm, palm faces up, is going to reach forward. So I'm just in a bit of a lean, still bending in through the knee, right palm reaching forward. That's going to fire up some core and back muscle, getting a little bit of heat building here in the system. And then if you'd like to transition into triangle, we're going to straighten the front leg. That front arm is going to cartwheel down. Back arm has choices to stay behind the back, to reach the back of the room, or straight up towards the ceiling. Fully breathing here. Head, I like to keep neutral in these. Looking up towards the ceiling can be quite tense and tension making for the neck. If you look down, it can be quite releasing for the neck. So neutral or looking down. When you're ready, we're going to bend into the knee. We rise back up into our warrior two. And then we're going to cartwheel down. So we'll take hands to frame that front foot. We're going to step back into our plank and we're going to go through our flow. We're going to lower down to the earth. And this time, if you like, low cobra or up dog, pressing back into your down dog. Breathing fully here. Again, we're thinking about length through the spine. You might soften knees, especially if hamstrings are tight. Softer knees, a better idea to try to get the heart closer to the thighs than having all that weight shift forward into the shoulders. When you exhale next, left foot comes forward. We'll plant that back foot. We're going to rise up into our warrior two. And again, we might make it a bit mobile, especially if knees are talking to you, bending in and out of that front knee. And then letting yourself land in that front knee. We think about drawing feet closer towards each other. They don't really move to provide that strength through the legs. We're lengthening through arms, looking over those front fingers. 3 more full breaths here. Tailbone tucking, maybe gentle drawing in of the belly towards spine, especially on that exhale. And then we're going to take that back hand, that right hand slides behind the back, left palm turns up, and we're going to take a little bit of a lean. So front knee still stays bent, a little bit of a lean forward as if we're reaching towards the front of our mat to fire up that torso, building that digestive fire in yoga. If you'd like to take it into a triangle, we're going to straighten the front leg, cartwheel down with that front arm. It comes inside or outside the thigh. Careful not to rest it on the shin or the knee. And then deciding what you want to do with that right arm. Does it stay behind the back? Does it reach to the back of the room? Does it reach up towards the ceiling? Bending into front knee, rising back up into your warrior two. We're going to cartwheel down and go through our flow. So we come into our plank. We lower down full chaturanga or to knees. We'll inhale either low cobra or up dog, this time pressing back into child's pose. Could be wide knee child's pose. So you could have those toes together, knees wider, or a regular one where those thighs are parallel. 5 full breaths in our child's pose. A moment maybe to catch our breath, to have less pressure on joints, an opportunity to be at ease here between some of those fired up muscle poses. When you inhale next, we're going to rise up tabletop. We'll tuck our toes. We'll press back into our version of down dog. We're going to take our right foot forward between the hands, and we're going to rise up into warrior one. So hips are going to be aiming towards the front of the mat. Find those hips first, bent knee, planted foot, get your balance, and to decide how you'd like to add the hands. Do you want to do cactus arms, or do you want to reach up more like a letter V arm? Shoulders melting away, palms facing each other, tailbone tuck. So we're careful here. If we land in that front knee and have a really deep back bend, it all lands in that low back. So we're tucking our tail to get the stretch through the front of that left thigh without landing in the back. 3 more full breaths here. Strong pose. Active pose. And when you're ready, hands come to heart. We're going to take about a 6-inch step in, and we'll shift weight to that front knee. So I can keep my back toes on for a balance. I could lift my back toes a little bit, or I could bring that leg parallel to the floor, trying to keep hips parallel to the floor too. So I can't lift my leg that high, but you might be able, you might be able to. Hands at heart or out down by your side, flying out in a T or even overhead for this balance. I am completely cheating with my shoulder in the wall. So we'll pendulum swing that foot forward, come back to the front of your mat, give everything a little wiggle, a little bounce, maybe even a little rounding forward for that back. We'll move through here. We're going to bring hands to heart. We'll take a deep inhale. Reaching fingertips. Exhale, rounding forward, maybe straighter legs now. The hamstrings are starting to warm up. We'll inhale into your halfway lift. Exhale, release forward fold, stepping back and going through your flow, lowering down to the earth. Inhale, low cobra or up dog. Exhale, press back down dog. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. So we're going to step left foot forward, planting that back foot. When you're ready, rise up, find your balance, and then add your hands for warrior one. Could be cactus, could be fingertips reaching. Hips towards the front of your mat, a tailbone tuck here. A little longer hold in these stronger poses, fire up those muscles. Noticing even how this side might feel compared to the other, especially if you are a right-handed person, often your right side dominant, might feel a little tighter in the front of the thigh. 2 more full breaths here. And then just bringing hands to heart, we take that little hop step in, maybe 6 inches, bending into the front knee, weight shifts there. We decide if we want to lift the foot a little or a lot. We decide what we might like to do with the arms. They could stay put, they can fly down by your side, reach T or overhead. We'll let that foot swing forward. We're back at the top of our mat. Give everything a little wiggle, maybe a little bit of bounce. We're going to bring hands to heart. We'll take a nice deep inhale, reach fingertips. Exhale, rounding forward. Inhale, find your halfway lift. This time, as you exhale, start to soften your knees. We're going to bend our knees, coming into a squat, and then coming into a seat. That's always a bit of a plop for most of us. As we're seated here, we're going to place soles of the feet on the floor. Grab hold behind your thighs. Now, if you're working with a tricky back today, this is your move. Please don't lift the feet. It makes it a little bit more irritating, especially to your SI joints. So you might just practice this long spine, holding belly in, and really feeling those arms pulling those thighs towards you. For those of us who back is not a concern today, we're going to see if we can balance. So we're going to bring our shins parallel to the floor, holding on to thighs, those deep abs. Our boat pose. You can get feisty if you want and let go or hold on. It's up to you. We're all going to bring feet down. If a forward fold butterfly is accessible to you, we're going to let knees drop out, soles feet come together and fold forward. If that isn't accessible because of hip structure, your feet go wide, rounding forward in turtle. So our forward fold is always very relative to hip structure and some flexibility. So for many of us, our forward fold looks a lot more upright, that I'm just slightly rounding forward, and that is good enough for what I need. Some of us have a little different bone structure in that hip socket and are able to go a little bit further. One more full breath here. When you're ready, we're going to slowly rise up, and we are going to open up hips reclining. We're also going to be doing our bridge pose and fish pose today. So I say that before we lower down. If you have any props you want to have near you that are a little further away, go ahead and grab them and place them a little bit closer to you. We're going to bring those knees together. We'll hold on behind thighs, and we're going to slowly roll back. Just a little easier way to open up hips in case that hip structure provides a lot of compression. Left leg is going to rest on the floor long. Right knee comes into chest. Now you could interlace fingers around the shin, behind the thigh. For some of us, that reach to the leg creates a lot of neck tension. So you could always have a block or a blanket behind your head so we can release shoulders a little bit more. This knee drawing in, releasing from the origin of your hamstring. If you like to intensify, you could kick that leg up, supporting it behind the thigh, Flex and point the toes. The leg does not have to go straight to get this stretch. It could go straight. I'm going to keep mine softly bent, working with a little bit of hamstring stuff today. So protecting hammies. That leg does not have to go up towards the ceiling, and the knee could simply just stay in towards the chest. Bending the knee, place that foot on the floor, extend that leg long. We're going to switch sides. So left knee is going to draw in, and we start with that knee in, holding on behind shin or thigh. That knee can always go a little bit wider too, meaning it's more like framing your rib cage rather than drawing straight in towards your heart center. Sometimes that creates a little more space for breath or a little more ease in the belly area. If you like, you can extend that leg up. Leg does not have to go straight. Supporting it, flexing and pointing if you choose with the foot. Maybe circling it around in one direction, circling in the other. My reliable ankle pop. And then we'll bend that knee and stretch that leg long. Both legs long here for a moment, so we're out of the front crease of the thigh. If you like, you can add in arms overhead as a full body lengthener or stretch. We're going to get ready for our number 4 stretch. If you'll bend your left knee, sole of the foot comes on. Right ankle is going to cross over that left thigh. Now you might stay here. It might be plenty of stretch. Maybe you interlace fingers through that little loop there in the center behind your left thigh to draw in closer. There may be a few of us with a hip structure that we feel this stretch better if we stack our right knee on top of our left and hold on to our ankles. The ankles can move out from the hips. So it could be number 4 stretch or shoelace stretch here. Making adjustments for sensation, maybe breathing fully here, especially when we open up hips and put some compression on the belly. We have a tendency to try to hold the breath. When you're ready, we're going to come out both feet on the floor and a gentle rocking of knees side to side. We're going to switch sides now. So left ankle crosses over the top of that right thigh, or left knee stacks on top of right. We draw that right knee in. We can interlace behind the thigh, that right thigh, or if knees are stacked in shoelace, we can grab hold of ankles. Ankles could pull further away. One more full breath here. And then we're going to go ahead and bring feet back to the floor, that same rocking sensation. We're going to go into fish, knees into chest, and then bridge. So fish pose is not recommended if you've got neck injuries, if you're working with back injury, but depending on where that back injury is, or vertebrae issues, you're going to hang out here. I'm going to sneeze. I apologize. I'm making a face here. We're going to walk feet wide, knees drop towards each other, constructive rest pose, hands wrap around. That is the alternative to our fish pose. If you're going into fish, we're going to stretch our legs long. We're going to kind of rock side to side so we can place our palms on the floor underneath our buns. Think about your big toe mounds touching, or you're squeezing the heck out of the inner edges of your feet. This is all about elbows here. So gaze stays on the ceiling. We press into elbows to lift our heart center towards the ceiling, and then very gently let the gaze drop back to the back of your mat. My big toes are pressing. The weight is in my elbows. My head is very gently resting back. So not a lot of pressure on the head. That's where the weight through the elbows comes into play. We'll do 3 more breaths here. Opening that heart center, opening that throat chakra. When you release, if you'll nod your chin to look down at your toes, and then slowly lower the back of your heart to the back of the mat, slide off of those arms. This is where I like a moment. I always say going to a rock concert, but I'm throwing my fists up towards the ceiling so my elbows get nice and loose. To counter that, we're going to draw knees into chest or a little bit wider. You could rock from side to side. We're going to be moving into bridge pose, which is safe for anybody working with anything in that neck. But you could also choose constructive rest pose again if you don't want to go into that inversion. We'll bring soles of feet to the floor, hands down by your side. We're going to be lifting our hips up towards the ceiling. So gaze stays on the ceiling, hips lift. We've got the weight between the shoulder blades. Now, this is a back bend, so you can really push that belly up towards the ceiling as long as low back isn't pinching. We're thinking about inner thighs staying parallel to each other. And we're fully breathing here. This wash of energy from the lower part of the body into the upper part of the body. When you're ready, we're going to slowly melt down that back. And once again, we draw knees into chest. Now, an option might also be happy baby here. So we might draw knees into underarms, send the soles of the feet towards the ceiling and grab hold of what you can grab hold of. Sometimes that's inside or outside edge of the feet, could be ankles, shins, might be behind the thighs. Three more breaths. And we're going to release the feet to the floor. Just a moment here to twist in any way you choose. If you're doing twisted roots, it'd be the left thigh on top of the right. You can drop knees over to the right, stacked. You could do twisted roots where you have that left thigh on top of the right and then drop over to the right. You could also draw your left knee into your chest while your right leg remains long and draw that across the body. So it really just depends on what suits you here. If the neck allows, we're going to gaze over the left shoulder. Deep breaths here, even with that compression, that twisting, we're inviting expansion through that rib cage, through that belly area, maybe even through the back rib cage, depending on where your twist has taken you. As you feel ready, we're going to draw knees back through center, gaze back through center, perhaps a moment here to wiggle. Our sides don't have to match, so you can choose whatever you would like to do on this side, including twisted roots, which would be right leg over top of left, stacked knees, or you could extend that left leg this time, draw that right knee in, and then pull it across the body. If possible, gaze goes over that right shoulder. Two more full deep inhales and exhales here. And we'll come back to center, taking a moment here to wiggle, to move around. For me, I don't know why after twist, but knees into chest always feels good to me. And then we are going to begin to find our way into final relaxation. And just to kind of let you know where we're headed here, if you're watching a recording, We are going to get set up in our final relaxation, do a little bit of grounding, and then I'm going to quietly log off. If you're able to stay longer than maybe 5 minutes, that would be ideal. 15 minutes would be really ideal. But I also understand we have days to get on with. So the invitation here at the end of class is to find a space for yourself that feels like, pardon me, it brings the most ease into the body. That can be any space. Doesn't have to be that traditional shavasana where you're reclining. It can be where you're reclining and feet are as wide as the mat, palms face up and work their way about, I don't know, 6 to 8 inches away from the hips. You could be resting on your side, your belly, legs up the wall. What will feel best for you in this moment? What will bring the most ease into the body in this moment? You might take a few of those settling breaths. So those deeper inhales, those longer exhales. We can think about those exhales settling into the weight of the body where you're connected to the floor. And before we let go of this noticing of breath, if you'll just spend about 3 or 4 breaths, just noticing the rhythm. So you're counting for yourself the number of beats it takes you to breathe in, the number of beats it takes you to breathe out. There's no right or wrong answer. And then, if you will, for about the next 4 to 5 breaths, let your exhale extend by 1 beat or 2. So, whatever that average number of beats it took you to breathe in, for instance, if it was 5, we're trying to exhale for 6 or 7 beats. We're going to do that for just about 5 breaths, inviting that relaxation response in that body through the breath. And then letting that awareness of breath recede, letting go of that awareness of breath. This is where we invite the body to breathe itself, no effort to breath. And we invite those longer pauses between thoughts. And sometimes that might lead to a quieting of the chatter of the mind. And we let go of all of the doing of our day, of our hours practice. And we invite ourselves to just simply be, to be resting here in a sense of ease, and maybe even in a sense of well-being, to be resting here in ease and well-being for as long as you choose today.